ago, the kraal entering ceremony. Many have been waiting for this moment. It was unclear earlier if we would be able to see the king, but it seems he will be coming out of one of these cars here, which will stop right at the doorstep of the Kwakhangela Mankengana Royal Palace. This is the palace that was occupied by his late mother, but now, of course, playing host to this important event. As you would have heard there, when the cars or the motorcade started driving in, what we heard was, the salutation from the Amabutho and all those who are gathered here. So the king will then be coming out shortly and going into the house.
Now, Linda, as we continue keeping watch of those proceedings, tell us about the significance of this particular event leading up to the king's coronation set to take place later.
All right, so this ceremony in Tlanta is quite important in the sense that it really marks the beginning of his reign, given, of course, the fact that the late king, Mngozuthu, has departed, and now there is a new king in the Amazulu nation. He is, of course, King Misuzulu KaZwelithini. There you see him exiting the car. That is the salutation from the Zulu nation. He's entering now the royal palace. As you can also hear the praise singers in the background singing him praises. I spoke to Mnisi earlier this week in Tlanta, and he was telling me the significance of the people that you're seeing here, the praise singers as well as Amabutho, really speaking and connecting the king and the Zulu nation to the past kings, really. So it is an important ceremony. At the moment, what you're hearing is the sounds of the praise singers. The praise singer to the late king, Mngozuthu, telling us that it is important in the sense that they will now be saluting a new king, of a different generation, a new generation. So, which basically signifies that the sun is rising in the Zulu nation. So you see the number of people that are outside here, including the security detail of the king. It tells you that tomorrow is going to be really a long day. That is Mngozuthu there on your screen. He was the praise singer to the late King Zwelithini, singing praises for him for just 49 years of his 46 years of his nearly 50 years of reign on the throne. So if there's one person who knows and understands the singing of praises to the king, it would be him. What you're seeing now on your screens are the princes, the siblings to the king, outside as the king enters into, of course, the Kwakhangela Mankengana Royal Palace. It is an important moment. We don't know whether the king will be spending the night inside the Royal Palace or will be leaving to enter the kraal, but we're told that this will be a ceremony that will be witnessed by a lot of people. So it really promises to be a big event in Tlanta, in the sense that a number and scores of people will be attending it.
Let's speak about the venue where this event is set to take place, Kwakhangela Mankengane Royal Palace. The ceremony, as you've said, or rather, the premises are heavily guarded as things stand right now. But we have heard from members of the Zulu royal family speaking earlier, saying that they expect the ceremony to go ahead as smoothly as possible, even despite this high tension that we've seen leading up to where we are now.
In fact, in Tlanta, on our way here driving to the Royal Palace, we came across a roadblock which consisted of members of the SANDF as well as members of the SAPS, which gives you or tells you about the kind of security that has been deployed to the Royal Palace. In fact, some of the guests that are arriving were telling us that the security is tight. Every single car that is coming close or anywhere close to the Royal Palace is being searched. Entering the Royal Palace itself, you have to obviously identify yourself in order to, today, in order to be able to enter the premises. So we're seeing a lot of police presence in the area. I can't necessarily say it is due to the tensions that we've seen in the royal family, but certainly this is going to be a big event and one that requires a lot of security on the ground. You would have seen also the King's motorcade heavily guarded by police officers. So right now, that's what we're seeing, Kandla.
So before we let you go, this weekend's event is also expected to be attended by thousands of people, including kings, traditional and political leaders. Speak to us about the people who've already started making their way there.
Well, so far it's been, the Zulu regiments, the Zulu maidens who've come to this particular ceremony. There hasn't been a lot of people that have come here in terms of, government delegates. The only person that we've also been able to see is the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, who's been outside singing with the Zulu regiments. But from where I'm standing, it's only been Zulu royal family members and many other people that have come to be part of this ceremony. So it is expected that this event will be attended by a number of people, including, of course, delegates. This is ahead of the official coronation, the government coronation rather, which will take place, we're told, in September. That one will also be addressed, that's where we will see, in fact, the handing over of the certificates of recognition, because as it stands, the King is, recognized as the King of the Amazulu nation, and his name has been gazetted. So royal family members also arriving here at the KwaZulu-Natal Royal Palace. So we'll see as time goes who exactly will be coming here in terms of delegates. But I can tell you now, it's quite different to what we saw last week during the coronation of Prince Simagate. Certainly a large number of people, larger than what we saw last week in Atlanta.
As we continue to capture the sounds of what is taking place there, let's also speak about the legal challenge that's also accompanying these proceedings. The coronation process for King Misuzulu KaZwelithini will go ahead, or these events leading up to the coronation will go ahead, despite the Supreme Court of Appeal granting a competing faction of the royal house leave to appeal against a judgment which effectively dismissed their contestation of the late King Zwelithini Zulu's will. Let's speak about the legal challenge to these proceedings.
Well, this particular court order has really no bearing in terms of the order itself on the coronation, given the fact that it does not interdict the ceremony from taking place. You remember, this is an order which then says that the Queen, who is the first wife of the late King, can approach a court to appeal that particular judgment, and which he was challenging, she in fact was challenging, and asking for 50% of the late King's estate. But you remember the judgment in that matter, Judge Madondo saying that in fact, the issues of the ascension or the throne are not challenged, because a king is not appointed or is not placed on the throne by a will, but he is of course appointed on issues of customs. She said she wanted about 50% of the king's estate and to nullify the marriages of the other queens. But also, you'll remember, joining that particular application was the two princesses who alleged, or in that application, alleged that the signatures in the king's will were forged. So at this particular moment, they've been granted, or the first queen has been granted leave to appeal, which means that at this particular point, there hasn't been any urgent application to the court to interdict this ceremony. So all things point, at least at this moment, to the fact that it will go ahead. There isn't any particular challenge to the throne at the moment, given also the fact that Prince Mnisi's urgent application, you'll remember, just at the end of July, was dismissed on matters of urgency. So it was dismissed, challenging or trying to halt the coronation. So at this point, this ceremony will go ahead.
So, Linda, neither the court ruling nor the announcement of the king's brother, Buzabazi KaZwelithini, as a third contender for the throne by the monarch's uncles on Thursday will stop the performance of the entering of the crown ceremony by Misuzulu. So as things stand, it would seem that things are relatively going smoothly, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, in fact, they're not quite fazed by that announcement that we saw yesterday by the brothers of the late king, saying that it was, really a joke, essentially, that was described by the traditional prime minister of the Amazulu nation. At this particular moment, there hasn't been any court papers filed, even from the side of Prince Smagade, who I asked last week if he will be making an application for an interdict. But of course, those answering on behalf of those who support him, saying that they don't foresee an application for a court interdict. What they've done is write to the president to get him to reverse his decision. What seemingly may happen from their part, at least, is the issue of an application for a rescission, for the president to rescind his decision to recognize Misuzulu as the next king. They're saying that as it stands, there isn't any application that was made, at least on the part of King Misuzulu KaZwelithini, to be recognized by the king. But as things stand, the president has recognized him. His name has been gazetted. What is left really is the handing over of that certificate of recognition, which will take place in the government ceremony. This one, as we know it, is a traditional ceremony which is conducted here at the KwaZulu-Natal Royal Palace.
So it's also very important to note that while this signifies a step closer to crowning the new king, this event or this particular ceremony of the entering of the crown won't be attended by all those that are gathering there. Only a select few will get an opportunity to take part in this particular ceremony. Let's speak to the significance of this.
In fact, the people that you're seeing on your screen right now are the ones that will be able to enter the crowd with the king. It's not everybody who will be able to enter and see the sacred prayer which will be taking place. You would have heard Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi explaining to us that it is not even an installation of the king, as the king is already on the throne. It is a ceremony to announce to the living and the dead that there is a new king on the throne, and the old king has departed this world, and the throne will now be occupied by Misuzulu. So it's basically a ceremony or a prayer which will not involve formal speeches. So its significance is really that, to make that particular announcement. But as I was saying earlier, Ntantla, it's also significant in the sense that the late King KwaZulu-Natal did not do this ceremony. It was his late father who participated in the ceremony or underwent the entering of the kraal. And even with that, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is telling us that it does not mean that you're not a king if you did not perform the ceremony. You can still be, and you're still a king if you did not perform this ceremony. So it can't necessarily be described. It can't be necessarily described as an installation really of the king. So it is an important ceremony to be conducted to inform the living and the dead. And what we're told, when he exits that kraal, everybody who will be present will be saluting the king, and it will of course be then song and dance which will continue straight after he exits the kraal.
What you are seeing there are live scenes at KwaKhangela Mankengane, where Amabutho have gathered in their numbers to pay homage and also salute their king, especially ahead of this much anticipated event, this going into the kraal, a very sacred event that's set to take place in the wee hours of the morning tomorrow. And this is another step closer to the coronation of the Amazulu King Misuzulu KaZwelithini. As you can see there, the Amabutho are raising their sagilas as well as assegais and shields as well, are also singing songs such as Nyamazi uZulu, speaking to the greatness of the Zulu nation as well. And a lot of pomp and ceremony also attached to this leg of proceedings, as we've seen a lot of choreography by the Amabutho as well as the maidens also preparing for this big event that's set to take place tomorrow at KwaKhangela Mankengane Royal Palace. As you can see, those live scenes out at KwaKhangela Mankengane. Let me bring back our reporter, Linda Mnisi. Linda, we already spoke about the magnitude of this event, the fact that it's expected to attract thousands of people, including kings, traditional and political leaders, members of royal families from all over Africa and other parts, diplomats, Amabutho, maidens, and also ordinary people. Now, we saw thousands of people descending onto these premises during the course of the day today. What does this mean to them?
It is, of course, a significant ceremony in that to them it marks really the beginning, the rising of the sun, given, of course, the fact that the Amazulu nation and the royal family were in mourning for a very long time. You'll remember since the passing of the late King Misuzulu last year, March. So most part of last year and the beginning of this year was really dedicated to mourning. You would have seen also the ceremony of Ikhambo, which is cleansing, which meant that other ceremonies could continue. Those ceremonies could continue, and that even the royal house could now start engaging on other activities and that. So this then is another step to then continuing the kingship and putting someone at the helm of the Zulu nation.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned the name of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the former IFP founder and leader, who is also the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation. Now, he's loomed very large in these succession debates and battles, especially after the death of King KaZwelithini. Buthelezi has been batting on the side of Misuzulu from the outset. Let's speak to the support and also the comments that he made during that press briefing that we heard earlier on today.
In fact, your question reminds me of, you know, the factions aligned to Prince Magade saying that he is not the core member of the family, saying he was a mere relative who was meddling in royal affairs, and you know, he basically saying that he was installed as the traditional prime minister even during the time of the late King KwaZulu-Natal, saying that he is an important figure in, of course, the royal family. And also what he said to us yesterday was the fact that it was not only him who seemingly backed, you know, the King Misuzulu KaZwelithini, but also some senior royal family members also being a part of those who supported him. We saw one of the Queen Mothers being introduced to members of the media yesterday, saying that in fact she is a mother to two of the princes that we saw yesterday, announcing Prince Buzabazi KaZwelithini as the next heir to the throne. So saying that she was just a surprise, as all of them were. Of course, he's been backing Prince Misuzulu. Even you'll remember during the time when the late Queen Mantombi's will was read in the very same palace that we were in at the moment. So that role that he's played is that of support and really trying to, you know, get this point across that this is the rightful heir to the throne. This has gone through the legal battles that we've seen playing out in the royal family, right to the ceremonies that were performed at this very same palace, because you'll remember it was not only the late king who passed away, but shortly after that Queen Mantombi also passed away off this very same palace. So we saw even in the traditional ceremonies that have taken place, he has played a significant role in making sure that they are performed and also giving guidance in terms of what it is exactly that needs to be done.
Now, in the same breath, Prince Buthelezi has been highly critical of the claims to the throne of both Buzabazi as well as Magade KaZwelithini, who last weekend performed his own entering the crown ceremony at another of the late father's palaces. Speak to those comments there.
So, you would have heard in the interview that I had with him yesterday, saying that, you know, whatever that is being done or whatever that whoever's being announced really does not impact on what we're seeing today, or the king being on the throne. He called it a joke, saying that it was really a joke that there is someone else being, you know, announced as the king or the heir to the throne. He in fact also did make mention that the king is already on the throne, and it's clear from the recognition by President Cyril Ramaphosa that there is only one king in the Zulu nation, and because that decision has not been rescinded, it does not in fact change anything at this very moment. And that is why he was also quite you know, pleased with the fact that the ceremony is continuing despite, you know, the last-minute announcement of Prince Buzabazi as the next king. So he even went as far as saying that, you know, last week's ceremony was conducted during the night, at night, and he says, according to the Zulu culture, they know that it's only witchcraft and wizards, witches and wizards who perform things at night. This one, he says, will be performed in broad daylight, seen by the thousands of people who will gather here at the KwaKhangela Mankengane Royal Palace.
Now, Linda, I want us to continue taking in the sights and sounds of all the events happening out there at KwaKhangela Mankengane. If you may just ask your cameraman to also pan through that scene. Those are live scenes at KwaKhangela Mankengane. As you can see there are women in full traditional Swazi attire, also called Bomage Bemaswati, who are also rehearsing in front of the main house of the Royal Palace ahead of this ritual of the entering of the crown by King Misuzulu KaZwelithini on Saturday. It's also very important to note as well that the king's late mother was from Eswatini as well. Other scenes that we saw earlier on were local men helping to prepare meat to be feasted on by the large number of people who are expected at KwaZulu-Natal Palace on Saturday, when King Misuzulu performs the ritual of entering the sacred royal crown and fully taking over as the Amazulu King. As you can see there, the people that are gathered in front of the house are waiting for King Misuzulu to emerge from the doors there. And this weekend's event, of course, is expected to be attended by thousands of people, including kings, traditional leaders, as well as political leaders, members of royal families from all over Africa as well. Diplomats are also expected to attend, Amabuto maidens, as well as ordinary people that we've seen descending into the premises of the royal palace in their numbers for the course of the day. So, Linda, to bring you back into the conversation, we've seen women in full traditional Swazi attire, or Bomage Baseswatini, also seen rehearsing in front of the main house of KwaZulu-Natal ahead of the ritual of entering the crowd by King Misuzulu KaZwelithini. It's also very important to note, Linda, that the king's late mother was also from Eswatini. Let's speak about these ties to the tiny kingdom there.
Yes. Yes, so you'll remember that the late Queen Misuzulu was, of course, a princess of Eswatini, and of course then subsequently became a queen of the late, Zulu King King KwaZulu-Natal Zulu. So obviously the Swati royal family or the people from Eswatini will also form part of this particular ceremony. They've also been a part of many other ceremonies that have taken place. If you remember quite well, during the Isambo ceremony, some of them even were part of the entering into the hall. They entered together with Amabutu, where of course the cleansing was taking place. So they've been showing great support from that particular side of things, coming to the ceremonies that have been performed. So we're expecting then that they will also be here, as you've already seen some of them already present here at the Royal Palace. We're expecting that many more are still going to come. We don't have an official list of who exactly will be here, so we will see tomorrow morning in terms of whether or not the royal family from Eswatini will be here, will be present at the royal house. But it is of course expected, given the fact that this is a traditional ceremony, that they will be part of those who will gather here at the Wakangela Mankengana Royal Palace. Quite significant moments that are happening. We don't know exactly when, of course, all of this will happen. I'm hoping to bring in someone who will give us a better understanding of the happenings right now, in terms of what exactly we're seeing and what it means. Does it mean that then we will be seeing that entering of the crawl today or tomorrow? It's still at this point very unclear, but all indications point to the fact that the king will enter the crowd tomorrow during the day. The program is obviously expected to start at around 10 o'clock, but we don't know if that will happen before that particular 10 o'clock or not.
as you can see there, live proceedings out at Kwakangela Mankengane Royal Palace, where the process of the coronation for King Misuzulu KaZwelithini will go ahead. It would seem that we are a step closer to that much anticipated main ceremony, where a bit later on the year we do expect to see the king being coronated. And despite the Supreme Court of Appeal granting a competing faction of the royal house leave to appeal against a judgment dismissing the contestation of the late King Zwelithini Zulu's will. To bring back our reporter now, Linda Mnisi, who is at the Royal Palace residence. Linda, as we have seen, there's been a lot of, call it song and dance, by Amabuthu, as well as the singing of maidens. And you saw Bomage Baseswatini also dancing outside the main house. Speak to us about some of the chants and the salutations being made by towards the incoming king.
In fact, those are going to be a big part of this ceremony. What we were told earlier this week is that with every ceremony that happens in the royal family or in the Zulu nation, there are particular hymns and songs that will be sung. So from early this week, Ndlandla, we saw some of the Zulu maidens practicing those songs, some of the Amabuthu, of course, rehearsing and practicing some of the songs that will be sung during this particular ceremony. So majority of what we're going to see play out tomorrow will of course be characterized by what you're seeing right now, a lot of hymns and a lot of dance, because of course it is a signal of the rising of the sun, a new chapter for the Amazulu King. It's not the installation, as they say. It is, of course, signifies that everybody now knows that the king is on the throne, and that is why we're expected to hear and see a lot of salutations from all of those who will be gathered here tomorrow.
You speak about the rising of the sun. We also saw rain also pouring down or trickling down on the royal palace and surrounding areas today. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi responded to a question earlier by our very own Kolim Gambi, where he said that this also signifies a good omen.
Yes, he says this signifies a good omen, saying that it shows that the ancestors have a positive attitude towards this ceremony. They have accepted the king as, in fact, King Misuzulu KaZwelithini as one who is sitting on the throne. So you would have also seen just shortly after it rained, there was a rainbow that we saw on one of the hills here at the Kwakangela Mankengane. All of that is seen as a sign. Rain is a sign of blessings from the ancestors. So it has been that particular day. We're seeing the weather, it's very cold today. For most parts of the day, it has been quite windy and very cold and rainy in the later part of the afternoon. So that was very much welcome here at the Royal Palace as a sign, as you would have heard there from Ubaba Ushenge. I'm just going to try to bring in Ubaba Mdlezhe Inyosi to kind of explain what the importance really of what we're seeing now. Ubaba Mdlezhe, ngibonga isikhathi sakho. Bawungasichazela mhlawumbe ukuthi ukubaluleka kwaloko esikubonayo manje ukungena kwesilo phakathi endlunkulu nawo amabutho la siyawabona ashaya amahubo la ngaphandle.
Ibutho phela yona ngubo yengonyama ulibona lingaka linamandla njena lizoqinisa yona ingonyama futhi lizonikeza amakhosi phela asalala esizwe nesizwe sonke sokhokho kwethu bezwe ukuthi sisekhona thina njengesizwe nanamuhla.
Sichazele mhlambe ngenkulumo eneyithulayo nina as inyosi bakungena isilo nakusasa lokhu mhlambe nikuprepareile mangabe niyaprepare.
Iyona ndlela yokudabuka yalapha ekhaya uma ngena isilo kuthiwa wena wendlovu nondlovu bayede bese kubongwa onke amakhosi amadala osuke kusho ukuyemukela noma iphuma la usenza okufanayo. Iyona ndlela yokuqinisa amandla ayo ngokhokho bayo.
Lokungena esibayeni nizobe nomethula ke bese niyenza kona ukumethula phakathi esibayeni.
Iyona ndlela ngimpela noma ngene esibayeni ukukhulunywa namakhosi ngoba vele ngobe seyingonyama nje onke amakhosi ahlala kulesi sihlalo akuye njengamanje. Ngakho ukwabiza kwethu sisuke siwakhuthaza ukuthi ngempela usenguye wawo lawo makhosi, nathi sisamhlonipha ngesigaba salawo makhosi amadala abusa phambi kwakhe.
Ngibonge kakhulu isikhathi sakho. That is Ubaba Buthelezi Mdletshe. He's the praise singer, also praise singer to the late King, explaining to us the significance of course, the songs that we're hearing at this very moment, also explaining the issue around the praise singing that we hear when the king, in fact, enters the royal palace, saying that it is, of course, to connect him to his forefathers, the late kings and departed kings, those who have come before him, those who have sat on the throne before him. So this is something that is going to be done even tomorrow when he enters that hall, and which then takes us back to what I was saying earlier, that song and dance will be a big part of this ceremony. It marks really the beginning of a new reign in the Zulu nation.
Linda, before I let you go, have we been able to establish what's happening inside or behind the doors of the royal palace, and whether we should expect King Misuzulu to emerge from those doors anytime soon?
Well, I can tell you now from what we were told is that there are certain things that will not happen in front of the public, or there are certain things that we will not be told about, because those, of course, are sacred and are things that need to be performed in private. We don't know what the king is doing inside the house at the moment. The motorcade is parked here outside. I'll ask my colleague Rianda to just show you the motorcade, which is parked right at the doorstep of the KwaZulu-Natal and the royal palace. It perhaps signifies that the king may emerge from the house. Where he will be going, we don't know at this point, but all the cars are parked right here outside, and we don't really know what is happening inside the house, and what is expected to happen at a later stage there.
So it would seem that there's a lot of secrecy that shrouds this particular event. Do we even know at this stage what time this ceremony of the king walking into the crowd will take place?
In fact, yesterday when I spoke to the spokesperson of the royal family, Prince Zulu, saying to us that the value of all of the rituals that will be performed in this ceremony is in, of course, the secrecy that needs to be upheld and kept, and also must be kept by generations to come. So it is nothing bad, but the value is in, of course, not revealing what happens in those rituals. It is for those who perform them and those who are tasked with that job of making sure that they perform these rituals. So those, including the entering of the kraal, will of course be only for those who will be allowed inside the kraal, just like we saw during the Ihlambu entering of the kraal by Amabutho and other senior royal family members who sung inside the kraal. So, of course, as you would have seen, the program is expected to start at around 10 o'clock. there hasn't been any indication of whether that will be the time when the king enters the kraal, but what we know is that from 10 o'clock the program will be starting, and one can automatically expect, traffic driving into Nongoma, can expect that kind of traffic that will, of course, be caused by the many people who are coming to the royal palace. So at this particular point in time, we don't know if the kraal entering will be at exactly 10 o'clock when this program starts, or will happen thereafter, because after the kraal entering ceremony, after the sacred prayer that will take place inside that particular kraal, that's when we will see the festivities then begin.
Well, let me thank our reporter, Mnisi. Of course, he forms part of the team deployed to cover these proceedings for this event leading to the coronation of the Amazulu King Misuzulu KaZwelithini. Ziyanda Ngcobo as well as Xolim Gambi are also stationed there, and be sure to catch us as early as 6 o'clock in the morning for Newsfeed AM as we continue the rolling coverage